Nielsen only recognizes 2 genders. They only recognize 3 races. And they only recognize certain groups of people in age.
I'm joined by Myki Angeline. She is a musician, an award-winning queer icon, a podcaster. She's also middays on 98 Rock in Sacramento. Myki, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for asking me to be here.
I had to have you on because, number one, we did an interview last year, and it ended up getting lost in the editing process.
You went through a lot.
So I wanted to have you back on because we had a great conversation then, and I wanted to bring some of that back, and I wanted to talk a little bit about you, and you also have a new job at 98 Rock, so that I wanted to highlight that as well. So middays at 98 Rock, how's that been going?
Let me just say right off the bat, if you've ever been in Sacramento, California, northern part, which the capital is, one of the most conservative cities we have here in California, predominantly white, predominantly men, predominantly straight, and this station has been white male since its inception in the 90s. And so for me to move to middays as a queer Filipina woman, because I think they've had this many women, I'm holding up 5 fingers, I think the entire time it's been on radio. So I wasn't sure, to be honest. I've been in this town for over 20 years, and I'm proof that representation from the inside out speaks volumes, because that first month that I was on the air, and I started at the very beginning of March, we went from 16th to 4th in Nielsen ratings. And the day part awesome. Is the part I became number 1 in day part in all of Sacramento. And my mind was blown.
Ratings are so fickle too. And
they are, right? They are.
It usually changes month to month, sure, but it's all based on trends. So you see how things are going, and I mean, like even a single day part book, if you see something that like jumps, it's like, oh, we need to take notice. What did we do that was different this month? And you keep it going. You try to keep it going, and you try to keep that momentum up. If you start seeing a downward trend, well, that's when you want to go, okay, you have one book that's bad. It might not be the end of the world, but you go, okay, what did we do that was different this month? How did that change? Maybe the survey respondents are a little bit different. Maybe let's change something.
Oh my gosh. And it's number 1, Nielsen only recognizes 2 genders. They only recognize 3 races. And they only recognize certain groups of people in age. And it's only about 2,000 or 3,000 people that get that meter or get that thing in the mail. So I'm aware of that, right? Number 1. And number 2, like in our situation, we knew at the end of April, beginning of May, we were going to see a slump because Country in the Park and the station up here, KNCI, has it huge. And so we knew Country was just going to be the hot thing for like 10 days. And so those are the things you understand too, right? But regardless, to be honest, I thought it was going to either stay the same or kind of go low, because here I am just conditioned to think this town is only white, straight people who want to hear rock. And it's not true at all. And so, I mean, and I'm very humble about it in the sense that I know that there's trends. I know that there's ratings. I understand that it's very limited. But it still feels good. It feels good to know. And I get feedback, whether people are DMing us in the 98 Rock socials, or they send us the text, or when we have our in-person, and they will say to your face, oh my gosh, I love hearing you, or thank you for me. They tell you, that's when you know you're doing something right. I'm just crossing fingers that I can do at least really well for the next, what's my contract, 3 years?
However long it's supposed to go, who knows?
I know, or however long it's supposed to go, because I'm really new at corporate radio. I've been working the music industry since 2007, but I'm new at corporate radio. I've been here less than 3 years, and I've only been doing this gig since March. And we're now in what, almost June?
I mean, you're killing it.
Thank you.
I mean, watching what you're doing on social media has been just so much fun to seeing the progression from, when you started on Saturdays.
Yeah.
And then
for over a year.
So from moving from Saturdays to middays, seeing that shift in your content, it was just been so fun to watch.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think I've had a lot of mentorship, because the person I took over, Pat Martin, is a legacy in this town. The sweetest guy, the most humble guy, but a legend in this town. He built 98 Rock. So I knew I was stepping into his footsteps. We had a person who was national. Carlota did a great job. She was remoting from outside of California. Because we were in this flux. It was right during COVID, right? But it was apparent that people wanted, at least in Sacramento, I can't speak for other markets. Sacramento's a medium market, and it's very local based. The rock scene here, the indie scene here, they're very much about supporting community and local, and they wanted someone in-house who could relate. And like I said, I've been working Sacramento in the rock scene since 2007, right? Working in it in journalism since 2011 in radio, well, internet radio and podcasting. So I had my pulse on, I just still knew people. I was still, I've booked entire bands. I've spoken on panels. It's like, I know people. And apparently that made a difference. So, are you ready to hear my story?
Oh my God, yes.
So here, this almost, I tell you, this blew my mind. So we do our Brews in the Burbs, and it's actually the afternoon show, the BS, the Bailey show. Nikki D and Nelson were there. Bailey couldn't be there. He went back home to his daughter's graduating from high school, and they're going to all move out here. Just like, I told you the backstory with that. And so, but I went there to show support. And also I would like to, meet listeners as well. And there were people that wanted to meet me as well. So here we are sitting at one of the high tops. A couple of guys come over to talk, and right away, one guy, he immediately went into him and his husband. And it like threw me back, because this is rock music. Like I said, you have to picture 90s grunge guys that love Nirvana, that love Korn, that love, if you know what those people look like, that's our average listener from before. But now you've got me on there, and Nikki D she's Black, and she's afternoons. She's the first Black person to be on 98 Rock. And you can tell he felt comfortable not only talking about his husband. We stood there for half an hour, and he shared with me his coming out story. And I told him, we have the same coming out story. He was in the Army. He married a woman because he thought, I know I'm straight. This is who I am. And then after the first child, he realized he wasn't. I know. And I told him how proud I was. High-fived him. I said, same story. I was married to a man, gave birth to my daughter, and I realized I want to be the husband. And so he told me where he works, and I was like, I'm going to come see you at work. I'm really proud of you. Thank you for being here and sharing your story, and thank you for listening to 98 Rock. And I could tell the representation matters, right? Because I'm walking the talk. The station Odyssey is walking the talk. We're not just corporate supporting. I tell you, I was so moved by that moment. That happened like 2 weekends ago.
I'm gonna cry. Like, remember I told you this was gonna happen.
I was so floored, right? And then now, because I'm such a mover and a shaker, I attended Placer Pride, which is up north. It's where Roseville is. You shared that story.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what goes on there.
Oh, yeah.
And I went there not only to show support, it was only their second year holding it in Roseville, but also in case Proud Boys showed up, because they're known for that in Roseville. Mm-hmm. Luckily not. It was such a great thing. And here it is. I'm networking. And Sacramento Pride had a booth there because they were gathering volunteers, because our Pride here in Sacramento is June 10th and 11th, right? So this was the weekend before. Talking to the main guy, and he needed a second speaker for the parade, and I raised my hand. And he goes, I need you. So now 98 Rock is going to be one of two speakers during Pride March in Sacramento.
Oh my God, that's amazing. So I have not ever been to Sacramento Pride for as long as I've lived in San Jose. I'm aware of it, and I've seen like a lot of stuff. I've got a ton of friends that live in Sacramento. Okay. They have all told me that Pride there is amazing.
Do they say that?
It might not
compared to, because you go to San Francisco Pride.
I actually don't go to San Francisco Pride. I do go to Silicon Valley Pride though.
Okay, Silicon Valley. I've never been. Yeah. Which I've never been. How different is that from San Francisco?
Silicon Valley Pride is a lot more low key, and it is not as big of a celebration, but it's still a really big celebration. It's a lot more community focused as opposed to globally focused.
Which is still important, which is what Placer Pride did.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of have to when you are a smaller city. San Jose has more people, it has a higher population than San Francisco, but I digress. It's very much been community focused. So we've got organizations here that are like the Billy DeFrank LGBTQ plus Community Center, Silicon Valley Pride, Do More LGBTQ. There's a ton of great queer organizations that kind of come together and help put on this whole big thing, and it's all volunteer run, and all of the people. And I should note before I go further, I do get paid occasionally by Silicon Valley Pride,
Love it.
so
Yeah.
it is a great organization. They do pay me occasionally. But I host a couple of their events, and it's just so much fun. And we do actually have quite a bit of crossover between San Francisco Pride and San Jose Pride, where we have a lot of the same drag queens that jump between the two organizations. We have a lot of the same, a couple of the same organizers, but San Francisco Pride is on like a global level, and they do, top 5 market in radio. But they do like just they have massive acts and things, and San Jose doesn't really have the budget for that, but we do have a budget to put on a really good show and have just an amazing time. So I recommend it to anybody that's in the Bay Area. Come to San Jose.
Yeah. When is it?
So we actually have Pride in August.
Yeah. You don't want to compete in June with San
Oh,
Francisco at all. San Francisco is like the top 3.
Yeah,
In the or top 5 in the world.
I think it's like either number 5 or number 4 in terms of big markets. So like they're
Wow.
like top of the line radio markets. And there's a couple of
Yeah.
radio stations that get involved there. In San Jose, we have like one cluster that gets involved, and none of the San Francisco stations give a crap, which is
Right.
really unfortunate because, the Bay Area is so multicultural and is so diverse. And like I said, more people live in San Jose than live in San Francisco. But I digress. The whole point is that it doesn't matter like where you have your pride organization. It could be, Placer Pride. And I mean like Roseville, that had to have been an amazing experience regardless.
I think what I love the most is because it doubled in attendance in just the first year. So obviously it was needed. The vendors there varied and they were all either LGBTQ owned or supportive. And half of them really were focused towards youth.
Mhm.
They even had one booth that was mom hugs. So if if your mom doesn't support you, come get a hug. And this is an organization that you can invite them out to anything, and they have chapters all throughout the Northern California.
Oh, I love that so much.
Right? Now, see, that's where, so coming back to Sacramento, and I'll be honest, straight up, we have 2 celebrations here in Sacramento, and one of them is separate from Pride. So Pride is always June. It's always the second weekend of June here. And then in September, Labor Day weekend, we have what's called the Rainbow Festival. And it's for a totally separate organization that we do. But that one always felt more fun, more inclusive to the community. And with the Sac Pride, it would be up and down. And I think if I were to phrase this correctly, it's just lack of support from the people in power here in Sacramento. Like in San Francisco, and maybe that's something that struggles with Silicon Valley, but it's like in San Francisco, they light up the building and they have all the flags everywhere 24/7. They're not just during June. We finally got a flag that gets raised here in Sacramento, maybe 3-4 years ago. I think it was 2020, maybe 21 or 19. I'm trying to remember. COVID really ruined my sense of
But
time.
even is time.
Right. And it's so I realized, and I was the one that gave a lot of lip service, and I'm realizing, you know what, I need to do more. And now that I have a platform, because Odyssey wanted to get involved, and they came to me because I'm the out one at work, right? What can we do? And so that's why I started talking. I went to the Plaza Pride. I'm connecting, saying, hey, listen, Odyssey, we've done a lot of flipping there. It's now Odyssey. It was Intercom. The stations are more inclusive. We have a DEI team. I'm on it. And we want to know, how can we support you? What does that mean to you? Do you need help with sponsorships, with partnerships? Because the more money that can come in, they can stop charging at the door. Because when you charge at the gate, you're hurting the ones that it's about, the ones that are, money wise, maybe they can't, our youth, especially our trans youth, with what's happening in the climate right now. $18 for one day is a lot for one person. It could be the difference between a cell phone staying on, a meal or two for the, it's like that. And yet, so what is Pride about? And so that's why it's like, I'm being a part of it to help be a part of it and make it and go to the meetings and have that influence. And now that I've got Odyssey behind me, maybe that'll make the difference, right?
I know that people say it's like a new thing, but queer people have been around for as long as humans have been around. But like queerness in the popular culture has been relatively recent in
Yeah.
terms of like movies and TV. Like there were queer people that were in movies in the 1920s and in the 1930s and in the 1940s. But they weren't able to be out because of the Hays Code and all of that nonsense.
Exactly.
And the way in which we are now more comfortable with talking about our experiences on air, and we're actually able to like express, hey, I'm a lesbian, I'm
And not
bisexual,
get fired.
and you don't get fired for it.
Yeah.
Thank you, federal government, for having those protections in there. That's pretty dang cool. Let's keep that going, please, considering all of the recent terrible things that have been happening. But it just like what you said in the very beginning of this, which was how important representation is to help other people come out and to help them have their like share their stories and connect. Like this is such an easy way for a radio station to connect with their audiences on a deep emotional level, to
Yeah.
allow your queer DJs to talk about being queer, or maybe even not even talking about being queer, just saying
Just being queer.
just being queer, being on the radio and saying my wife, blah, 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 and like it just not
The
being
little
a
slips.
problem. Yeah, exactly. And then,
Yeah.
people make that connection and they go, oh, and then they look on your Instagram and they go,
Mm-hmm.
all right, okay,
Yep.
cool. I'm represented here too. It's so cool.
Thank you for that. And because of the station and the way it is, the discussion of it and bringing it forth, it isn't, and we know how corporate radio goes. You have to go with the brand, with the trends, right? I'm also fortunate that the company doesn't force me to represent myself a certain way on the internet, because corporations will do that. They haven't, in fact, when I did my letter, the announcement that I was moving to middays, and that happened so fast, I had to come up with something in 5 minutes. And then luckily our writers kind of tweaked it a bit, but I made sure that I showed that I was showing Filipina queer representation in Sacramento and on 98 Rock. That's listed there. And I did that on purpose, and no one fought me on it. They were like, let's do it. Right. So it's about the right place and the right time, and it has happened now. So, that's why this interview had to happen again, because I wasn't prepared with all this the first time we talked, and the universe knew that.
Yeah, and I guess I wasn't prepared for it either.
Oh, bless your heart. You've been through so much. My
I'm all right.
goodness.
Hey, it's not really about me. It's about all of us in the radio
Yeah.
industry, and that's part of the reason why I want to do this, is because, queer people in radio don't really get a whole lot of resources to like talk about us, talk about our experiences, to express ourselves. And yeah, we could do that on Instagram or on TikTok. We could post some queer stuff, but like the radio is still a medium where we're going to be reaching listeners. So it's so important for us to we don't have to go on the air and say, so I was with this guy and this girl and this NB last night, and let me tell you what, it was so, and like, I don't have to do that, because my bisexuality is attraction based, not action based, right? So
I like that. Attraction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bisexuality is attraction, not action. That's like it's a whole thing. So but it's so important for us to do that, so that we can actually reach our audience, like I said, on a deep emotional level. It's so simple, and it's so important, and I'm so glad that we have people. I'm so glad that Sacramento has you.
Thank you.
It is, as you said, it is a market that is seen, at least, as being very predominantly white, predominantly male, predominantly conservative. And I bring this up in almost every interview and podcast, but it's so important to me. Generation Z, 20% of Generation Z identifies as some identity on the LGBTQ plus spectrum. What does that tell me? Not that it's becoming trendy, but that the actual full population of people that are queer is probably somewhere around 20%. And that tells me that in every single city in this country, every community in this country, it's very likely that if you have 100 people in that community, 20, maybe 20, a little bit fewer than 20, are queer. So even a small community like Roseville still has a queer community.
Yep.
Sacramento, maybe smaller than San Jose, they still have a queer community there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just in San Francisco. We're not just in New York City. We're not just in Los Angeles. We're in Florida, Tallahassee, Florida, dealing with all the terrible bills that are coming out of Florida.
What a nightmare. My
Right?
heart goes out to Florida and Texas.
Yeah, yeah.
Florida is just, it's evil incarnate. It feels like watching a horror movie in real time as it's being filmed.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Same.
It's like watching the beginnings of World War II happen all over again. It's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. But that's part of what makes us as I hate using the word influencer to describe people on the radio, but that's what makes us influencers so important, because we can be a normalizing factor. We are that person saying, "Hey, look, I mean, you're just a normal person.
Yeah.
You have a radio show, and there was at least one other person that connected with you on a deep emotional level, and those are just
At a brews in the burbs, like at a
those
brewery thingy, like
right.
it was nuts. It wasn't Pride. It was a
Yeah.
brews in the burbs. It was nuts.
It,
You
it
know, it's, you were bringing that up, and if I could touch on it,
yeah.
knowing in radio, because we talked about the Nielsen ratings, we know how limited they are, right? We also, what we didn't touch on, which is most communities won't always buy into it, because to order to do it, you have to give your basic information, which is your full name, your address, your age, your race, your gender, and LGBTQ, black, brown. A lot of us don't want to be on someone else's register because we don't trust it, right?
Right,
So the
yeah.
only person that doesn't care is the top market that it hits, which is the white male 25 to 54.
Mhm.
Right? Typically, because if you look at, like, Sacramento it has different, very, like, Citrus Heights, Roseville. So the 916, it's our main area code. The majority of the population here that has dared to tell you that they're here is like 70% white.
Mhm.
So, but I know I'm reaching past that. And especially because streaming is a thing, right? So people can listen to my show whether they're in Sacramento or not. And even if they're not in the ratings, I'm reaching them. And that matters. If they can just hear me and just hear me being myself, and then maybe they'll reach out to me and DM me on and want to talk about something, or see me when I'm out doing an activist thing, or when I'm with Girls Rock Sacramento organization, or I'm going to be at Pride. And I know that those things matter. I consider myself an elder now because I'm in my 50s. Like the guy says, I sound a lot younger on the radio. I
The
sound a lot younger on the
audacity.
radio.
Oh my gosh.
But I'm trying to fit into my grown up elder pants, and know that I have a responsibility, and I want this responsibility to be that person you can talk to and come up and get a hug, and that support system. And if it's 10 to 3 Monday through Friday on a rock station in Sacramento, so be it, and I'm going to ride it till the wheels fall off. I'm going to figure out where I can take it and where I can't. How do I ride that balance of corporate rules and community care? I'm still learning that, like, every day.
Mhm.
So far I don't know what I can't do. And so I'll just do it till I'm told I can't, I guess.
That's the way to do it.
So
You
my hand
just
is
keep going.
slapped.
Yeah, you just keep going until they tell you no.
Yeah.
Better to
Yeah.
ask for forgiveness than permission, as a lot of people
Yes.
say.
Though I don't know. I know sometimes it depends. I guess it just depends on what you say on the air.
Well,
But yeah, so I find creative ways to reach folks and let them know that, they matter and they're here. What's the saying that boomers coined and us Gen Xers kept using was, "We're here, we're queer, get used to it."
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way that a friend of mine says it is, and look, this is an internet show, so I can say this. It's not being regulated by the FCC, but we're here, we're queer. Fuck you.
So fuck you.
Yeah.
That's great.
If you were going to be giving advice to a younger queer person that is getting into radio, what advice would you give them?
Oh my. And younger, here's what's funny is you say that, and I'm of the generation where you respect and learn from your elders, but I learn every day from our youth. Every day. Our Gen Zers and our millennials, especially the Gen Zers, have taught me so much. So I would say, if radio is where you want to go, if it's broadcasting, if it's podcasting, and you want to be your authentic self, do that from the jump. Don't hide it. I mean, you don't have to every time, but just make sure that when you're signing things and you're filling things out, you introduce yourself. Because if you, how do I word this? It's like, you are the example. You're inspiring somebody. You could be 9 years old. You could be 15 years old, and you're making a difference for another person out there that you may never meet. And it's a great thing. I say, and then find your community because we're out there, right? I mean, I've got it all over my socials. I've got it on the website. If you go to krxq.net/shows and you click on my name, you'll see it says queer, vegan, Filipina mom. Boom. Right there off the bat, because I think it's important you know that. I don't go into the diatribe of how I came out or how many people I've dated after that, but I think you need to know that about me. That
an aspect of your identity and your personality.
Absolutely. The vegan thing I get more shit for than I do being queer.
Well,
it's like, I'm like the hard, when people ask, why are you single? Well, I'm straight edge. I'm straight edge. I'm vegan, and the blind old cat has the right side of my whole bed. So that's why I'm single for the rest of my life. I'm the hardest person. Like at work, I just got the invite. Oh, pizza day. Oh, well, should I bring my own since I'm the only vegan in the whole building? Oh, you might have to. So then obviously, it's it's just like, I mean, and then they try, but it depends on what's being catered there. And if it isn't, then I just got to either eat before I show up or bring my own food. And it's something I've been used to since I went vegan in 2018. So I don't take offense to it. Some folks, so they'll go out of their way to make sure I have it. But I'm telling you, that's more of the reason I get flack than being queer. So you young folks, if you're watching this and you're listening, just be you and make sure your focus is more on your craft and how you're doing in the job itself, and not trying to also work on you being you. And I think the youth have so much more that they're navigating than I did. Mine was simple. Mine was, am I a lesbian or not? You've got now gender identity, you've got pan, you've got non-binary, you've got asexual, you've got all these, trans, all these, and from birth almost, really, now. So I think there's more for them to navigate and to figure out. I think it's like when you want cereal, but you go down the aisle and you have 120 different choices, and it would be a lot easier if there were just 4 boxes on the shelf. And I think that's what our youth are going through right now. And I just want them to know, as an elder, I understand that to a point, but I'm open to be educated.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm a safe space to just talk to, lean on, laugh with, and just more importantly, be yourself, whatever that means. And you're still growing. And that could, I don't want to say change, because I evolve, right?
Right.
When you evolve we're constantly growing as individuals. So, I mean, I came out at 29. That's late for me. I think it's even really late for kids now. They're like, 29? Will I even live that old? Yeah, you'll live that old.
I was 33 when I came out. So yeah.
I think even bisexual, there was I don't know how it is now for anyone coming out and identifying as bisexual or pansexual, but you and I in our day and age, that was frowned upon, because it's like, pick a side, pick a team.
Yeah.
You're being greedy and you're being indecisive and you make no sense.
There
really?
Was, so there was like an entire thing in like the mid 90s when I think Time magazine had like a big cover of a bunch of bisexuals. Like, bisexual, it's the new thing, it's the new hot thing. They're not gay, they're not straight, they're something else. And it was wild. And if you go back and watch a lot of like late 90s TV shows, early 2000s TV shows, it's like there's a lot of really like heavy biphobia all over anyway, just a bunch of stuff that I've been noticing. Yeah. Like there was a magazine that came out in the 90s. It was called it was called Anything That Moves. It was a bisexual magazine. Of course, it came out of San Francisco. And they actually had an entire manifesto of like, what does it mean to be bisexual? And even in that manifesto, they said, don't assume that we need to be involved with multiple genders, or don't assume that we need to be involved with 2 genders just to be satisfied. In fact, don't even assume that there's only 2 genders, because gender is a spectrum. Yeah. It's fascinating that they knew this. They knew this in the 90s. They knew this. If you read all the work of Brenda Howard from the 1960s and 70s, she was a bisexual icon that was one of the first people that was organizing pride rallies all over the country. And we've all of these identities have been here as long as humanity has been here. So it's important for us in the radio industry to be like, here we are. And
Yeah.
just like you said, listen to the youth because they're the ones that are going to lead the way.
Try not to focus on only mainstream media because they're the ones that are trying to shape, when you've got states that are banning critical race theory, right? Because they don't want you. I mean, what was the thing I shared yesterday about, oh my gosh, I blanking on her name, the first Black student that was integrated with the white school, and she's only 66 now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And what that tells you is a lot of the people who are fighting critical race were the kids that were yelling at her and calling her those bad names when they were the same age. And so don't let that scare you. That's another advice. Live your truth. I'm living proof right now. You are living proof right now that that's not what's going on, and that's not the norm.
Yeah.
It's not. Don't let that scare you. It's not. We saw what happened in Georgia. They come freaking, what is her name? I just flagged on her name.
Stacey Abrams.
Thank you, because I have her shirt. Stacey motherfucking Abrams. Her and her team flipped Georgia, and they tried hard. They were burning ballot boxes, like, the drop-off ones. They were getting rid of them. They were closing, and it didn't matter. And they turned that state blue. And if that tells you anything, that can happen anywhere here in the U.S.
It's just a matter of time.
It's power in numbers. Show up to the prides, show up to the marches, show up to the peaceful protests, because when we see the numbers, we do not feel alone in what we're doing. And that's why I realize I need to be that change with our Sacramento Pride and be part of that positive growth to show that it isn't a corporate grab here.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we include everybody, and especially why we have it in the first place. The history of it. Like when I'm emailing my team at work, I made sure, for those who don't know, and I gave that not little, but like paragraph and a half, a little kind of summation of why we have Pride, because I don't assume people know. And I think we're better off when I share that. And they understand as a team, if we're Odyssey and we want to do this, we're involved for this reason and not just a power grab and to look good in all of the month of June and then forget about it for the next 11 months, right? At least not on my watch.
That's right. Pride Month. Listen, Pride Month is every month for all of us.
It is.
So, Myki, thank you so much for joining me today. You're heckin' amazing. If you're not already following Myki Angeline, please go follow her on the socials, and make sure you listen to Middays on 98 Rock, because it's a hella good time. I've listened to your show before, and you sound amazing, friend.
Thank you.
Keep killing it. Please keep killing it.
Thank you so much.